Hi, and thank you for clicking on this video. My name is Furk, aka Phil, and today I want to show you the Canon FM2 compared to the lately released Nikon ZF, which design is based on the FM2, and also why I think that Canon should enter the retro design camera game. If I hold both cameras next to each other, you can see they are quite similar regarding design, but regarding the size, it's quite obvious that the ZF is bigger and it's also heavier. To be honest, that was the first small disappointment when my ZF arrived. When I saw the announcements of the ZF, I thought to myself that it's cool to have a retro camera, and automatically I assumed that the size of the camera will also be the same size like original Nikon FM. But when I unboxed it, it was quite obvious that this camera it's much bigger than the original one. Again, when I put them side by side, it's quite obvious, and I will also put the measurements on the screen for you guys. And regarding weight, we are looking for the FM2 of 693 grams, and the Nikon ZF with the 40mm f2 kit lens, it weighs 882 grams. So the ZF is significantly more heavier in my opinion, and you can feel that if you hold both cameras in your hands. But still, in my opinion, it is great that Nikon took the inspiration of one of their most sold cameras in the past, and this camera is, in my opinion, still timeless. If you hold one of these retro cameras in your hands, you will agree that camera brands did a great job on designing those things. And that's what I want to just compare both cameras. And just for the fun of it, I just want to compare the new one with the old one. The first part I want to address is ergonomics, since when I hold the ZF for the first time, after some time I had the feeling that's not as comfortable like modern cameras, and that's mainly because in my opinion, and that's also what a lot of people complained so far on the internet, it's that the thumb has no dedicated place to rest. Somehow I find myself just searching for a space where to rest the thumb. And in my opinion, the original Nikon FM had that solved basically due to the simple fact that film cameras needed a rewinder, and that's where your thumb automatically rests. And that's also the point where it just feels secure in your hand, although you don't have a grip in front of the camera. The ZF has a little bit small grip here, so to say, but it's not really a grip in my opinion. It's just a small dent to try to give you some hold. In my opinion, Fujifilm has solved that over the times better. Looks like for me that the ZF is more regarding design than function in that regard. And that's why I'm also a little bit disappointed that Nikon didn't thought that through regarding design, because on the old one, to be honest, it feels better in the hand. It feels more secure. Sure, this setup in comparison is 200 grams lighter. If you put a lens which is 1.4, it might be a little bit heavier, but my Canon AE1 is a little bit heavier than this one. It basically lies, I think, in between. And due to the rewinder, you have a much better secure grip compared to the ZF. Besides that, you have here also the dials. The FM2 has one dial, which has ISO included with the shutter speed. Dial and twist it, you can adjust the ISO, and if you just spin the wind, you can change your shutter speed. And the aperture, back then it was on the lens. On the ZF you basically have two dials combined with a little bit of modern controls. You have your ISO dial and you have your shutter speed dial, and your aperture you basically control it all over the front wheel or the back wheel, depending on how you prefer it. You can customize that. And overall it's a dial control like Fujifilm, but still has that retro touch, which is great. And that's also the reason why I bought that new camera. Let's have a quick listen how the dials compare to each other. So this is the FM2. Now the ZF, twisting the ISO dial. Now this shutter speed dial. And the exposure compensation. In my opinion, these dials of the ZF feel quite premium. I had the feeling that Fujifilm style has a little bit more plasticky feel. Still good, but here you have, I think it's brass beyond this color, and you feel the quality difference. And to complete the ASMR experience, just let's pull that rewind trigger and also release the shutter. That's the FM2. And now the shutter of the ZF. Yeah, just a small comparison. And what else can I tell? Basically, it's a great visualization how modern tech can get inspiration by old designs. But also on the ZF, you can see what the latest technology has an emphasis on the design. For example, the size has, in my guess, several reasons why Nikon was not able to keep the small form factor, so to say, from the FM2. One point, in my opinion, is the Z mount. If you take out the mount, you can see that, yeah, I think on the camera it's not possible to tell, but compared to the E mount and the RF mount from Sony and Canon, this mount is the biggest, and therefore the cutout for the lenses is bigger. The size of these lenses are also bigger, and that's one reason, I guess, why the design has to be bigger compared to the old one. Second point is what I already mentioned, is the tech inside this camera. The ZF has a retro design and also touch, but it has the latest technology which Nikon can offer us. This camera has IBIS, that means in-body stabilization for photo and video, and that technology needs space in the camera body, and therefore you have to find a way to cramp that in such a body. Next point would be the screen, I guess. Nikon included with the ZF the first flip-out screen, and I assume that this one is also taking up some space. And the last point, I guess, which is also not to be underestimated, is the battery. Because I guess that Nikon didn't want to design or create a separate battery just for the ZF. These batteries, I guess, are already in the Z6, Z7, Z8, Z9, and this already has a specific size. And you see that this already determines how thick a camera should be to get this battery work in the camera body. Just for an illustration, if you put the battery on the FM body, you see that it's taking already a lot of space. Hard to include a card reader, or in that case how Nikon solved it with a dual card slot with an SD and micro SD. So in my opinion, that's the reason why Nikon had to design a bigger body. And now to the thought why I personally think why Canon has still a chance in the game of retro cameras, especially because of the size. Let me just quickly grab my Canon AE1. You can see that the Canon AE1 and the Nikon FM2 are quite similar regarding size and weight. And that's just simply the fact that the design and the size back then, I think Minolta's camera were also similar regarding size and weight. It was just the standard back then. And in my personal opinion, I think that there's a market gap for cameras which has the original size of the cameras back then, because that would be the true retro experience combined with modern technology we have today. Nikon's approach with the ZF is, in my opinion, is the best retro experience right now for full frame, because Fujifilm has also great solutions and cameras which have retro designs, but Fujifilm doesn't offer full frame cameras. And therefore, right now, the ZF is the only camera on the market which serves these two specific requests, retro and full frame. If Canon is able to revive the Canon AE1 and also keep the size down to a size like these old cameras back then, I think that Canon could get a foot into that retro game, which is currently dominated by Fujifilm and is currently also rivaled by Nikon ZF. In my opinion, Canon also has the opportunity to do that, because there's one camera right now in the full frame market which is small and has modern technology in it and doesn't cost as much, and that's the Canon R8 right now. The Canon R8 has the body of the RP, and if I put the measurements on the screen and compare it with the AE1, it's quite close, and I think it would be possible to get the R8 technology into a retro design like this and just keeping the size down. There are two reasons which I already mentioned with the Nikon ZF why this one got bigger. The first one is the R8 does not have IBIS, so that space is saved. And the second one is that the R8 uses the smaller batteries from Canon, and that's also saving space in the camera. In addition, the R8 only has one single card slot, which also saves space, and all these factors, I think, would make it possible for Canon to cramp that technology of the R8 into a retro body and revive the AE1 line. And social media basically shows that there's a great demand on retro cameras. Fujifilm showed that with the X100V, which was blown up by TikTok. In general, the XT line of Fujifilm is selling quite well. Leica has their own setup and game in that market. If people have the budget, they go into the M line of cameras from Leica. And if they are also film photographers, they just purchase the M6. The revival of the M6 just showed that there's also quite a big demand, that people are willing to pay high price for retro and whatsoever. And now in 2023, Nikon proved that there's also a big demand with the ZF regarding retro cameras. The ZF showed that the demand is real, because for the ZF a lot of spaces already sold this camera out. And that's the reason why I think that Canon could get into that retro game, because Fujifilm and Nikon already did their move. Sony is not interested, I think, in that direction, because the only thing they do in this direction is the C line, so the A7C, A7C2 and A7R, and I think only the A7C and A7C2 have that retro design where the bottom plate is silver, and that's the only thing which reminds you of a retro camera, but the experience is not coming close. So Sony you can disregard regarding retro cameras. Leica's in its own league. That means that people who don't have the budget, they don't consider Leica regarding retro. That just leaves Fujifilm and latestly Nikon. As I already mentioned, Nikon is the first company which serves full-frame retro cameras. Now, if you take hypothetically an R8 and put it into a retro design, Canon could also play the price card to get that kind of camera sell well. Why? Because the Canon R8 is already priced very well for a full-frame camera. In Germany it's around 1,700 or 1,600 euros, body only, compared to the Nikon ZF. Nikon ZF is priced currently body only 2,500 euros, but it has much better specs and is much more modern. But that's also the reason why I think that the retro R8, why people would buy it, and that's basically for the price, because full frame retro, hypothetically think it would be around 2,000 euros max, ideally 1,800, something like that. I think most people would rather take the R8 with the smaller size and a lower price over the ZF. And me personally, I would buy that immediately, because that's the only disappointment I had with the ZF, and that's the size, because my expectations in the reviews was that the ZF is the same size of the Nikon FM2. That's not the case. The reasons are quite logical, and I see why it is, but still deep inside my heart I wish there at some point there will be a full frame camera which has the exact dimensions, almost the exact design like older cameras. Yeah, that's just a thought I had using the ZF right now for a week. And yeah, and let me know, what do you think? Am I wrong regarding camera retro demands right now on the market? Would you consider a Canon retro camera with modern specs? What kind of specs would you prefer? That's just my breakdown how it could be done. And yes, if you're still here, thank you very much for watching. You are the one who deserves the like. And if you want to support my small little channel, just click on the links below in the description. And if you want to check out the unboxing of the ZF and why I think most YouTube previews were wrong about the ZF, just click on this video.